Welcome to Eternal Paradigm. Together, we're uncovering the human experience and exploring physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual stories with me, your host, Amy Ravel. Hello, hi, welcome to this episode of Eternal Paradigm. I hope you're enjoying your journey to find you. Before we head into my reflection and where things are at, I really feel that I need to give you an update, an exciting update into what's happening, because you need to know what's happening behind the scenes. And I'm really, really excited to bring this to you. So I have had lots of requests from so many of you to add a video dimension to the podcast, and it's been something that my guests have been really happy to take part in as well. So updates include video podcasts will soon be available. So more updates on this to follow, because it is a bit of a work in progress, and I'm sure you can appreciate that. And that's basically one. The other thing is, a quick question for you. Did you catch the live stream episode of Eternal Paradigm? On Saturday just gone, I was joined by Michael Bivens, and we talked about comic books, creativity, and make-believe, and it was all for the PodVCon Spring Break in Global Podcast Convention. So I hope you managed to catch that, because I think the whole video podcast and live streams is quite possibly something that's going to be happening more frequently. So in other news, I'm also excited to announce a series of conversations coming soon around purposeful business and conscious creativity. So you know, both of these series were being planned before Christmas, and everything's kind of underway. So soon they'll all be available for all of you to listen to and to see what's really possible. Head over to the Eternal Paradigm Facebook page for all of the latest updates and news. And if you're lucky enough, you'll also be in the group soon enough too. The Facebook group, that is. And if you're following on Instagram, then keep a lookout for a series of new IG Lives that are going to be announced very soon. And don't forget to join me as guests in Clubhouse this month, in the month of March, on Saturdays at 7 o'clock. You can come and join us in a room where we'll be talking about subjects that make it to the podcast and some subjects that may not have been covered yet. So definitely do that. And that brings me, I guess, onto my reflection for this episode. So, you know, language is a strange thing. And some languages have words and concepts, or words for concepts and ideas. And some languages have absolutely no words for these. And for me, a lot come to mind. And I'm sure they do for you as well. So what I found about English, the language that I have a very interesting and somewhat immersed yet distant relationship with, is that it opens up the world to me in some ways and yet closes it down in others. And I kind of sit in this. So it definitely has one common word. For example, you know, English has one common word to describe or shroud a multitude of experiences. And I find that pretty fascinating. And I bring this up because, you know, we're constantly throwing out labels and tick boxes and define yourself and box yourself and where are you? And so I'm kind of on that flex, I guess. So I'd love to know if you have had an experience with language that has changed or transformed your life, or has significantly shifted something for you, because it has for me. For me, my transformation, I guess, came in my darkest time, at a time where I was pretty much in a state of depressive paralysis. I realized that Gujarati, my mother tongue, I guess, has so many words and names just for light. And just like that, this other realization struck me, which was that the yogic sciences have so many levels of consciousness. And I'm so grateful to have had that, I guess, knowledge, learning, understanding, or knowing embedded in me so young, that it really helped me through. And I just thought that I'd share that little insight with you before I really go into this episode and to my guest, where language, cultural experiences, and the story of immigration is relevant to my guest in this episode. So Vicki Oldani, a retired teacher, is just a beautiful soul who has so much to share. And I am eternally grateful to have been able to have this immense open conversation with her. And, I'm just so delighted that she joined me to talk about her spiritual journey, but this place that she's got to, and she touches on the process that it's kind of taken, what's happened, and we do talk about the fact that she is a retired teacher and what has that meant for her, being a teacher, what of her personal experiences and learning and ideas have come out and really kind of showed up for her. Absolutely amazing soul. A great to have a conversation with. And I just wish that, I wasn't talking to Vicki the way that we were, which was, we've been able to do it this way because technology is allowing us to. We were having a video chat, but I would just love to be sitting there having a full-blown conversation over some tea and cake or coffee and cake with Vicki, because, oh, wow, amazing. And I'm so delighted that you're going to be hearing her now too.
Well, I am. Oh, that's a big question, right? To answer.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am, as far as identifying me, I am a 63-year-old woman who lives in the United States, in Illinois, Central America, in Springfield, Illinois, which is the state capital. It's the land of Abraham Lincoln. He's our claim to fame. I've lived here for almost 40 years. I'll be married this May for 40 years. I got married and we moved here. I came from Chicago, Illinois. I have 3 grown daughters that live on the East Coast and the West Coast of the U.S., and 2 grandsons. I just retired last May, and I had so many people tell me not to do it. Do not retire. You won't know what to do with your time. And I was like, I'm sorry you wouldn't know what to do with your time, but oh man, this is my time. This is my time to just really see the fruit of a lifetime of spiritual journeying, My daughter's always telling me, Mom, you have done so much of the work and so much of the longing and the praying. She goes, just sit down and watch the fruit fall from the trees. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that. That's a little bit of an identifier.
And what did you retire from?
I was a high school German teacher. And I also taught a course that was not in German, and it was under the umbrella of foreign languages. It was like my last final hurrah in the school district for 20 years. I taught a course in English for seniors that was called Global Awareness and Cultural Perspectives, and it was my baby. I proposed it. I wrote the proposal. I taught it for 10 years before I brought it to the district. And it was really mainly to teach kids to be aware of the rest of the world and whether they were taking a language or not, and to be aware of themselves. And it was the highlight of my career, I will say. And I also want to kind of keep working with that cultural class concept and see where it goes still in my retirement, because I plan on doing things with it.
Absolutely. So tell me, how did the course come about, and how much of your own personal journey manifested in the course that you went on to teach seniors and then took it further?
Well, I think that you would really relate to this. I was an immigrant's daughter. I grew up in Chicago. My father was Serbian. My mother was German. They both lived through that war in Germany. And I grew up in a really peculiar spiritual vacuum because of it. My dad was really pretty much sent away to be apprenticed at the age of 13, was on his own. My mother lived through this devastating war, and they moved to the United States, and they just had no room for anything but make life work now. If you think of the hierarchy of needs, my parents were looking for that safety, security after a war. There was a huge vacuum. There was no sense of God or magic or hope. It was just all about life and materialism and never going through the sufferings that they went through in Europe. And I mean, I get that totally. But I think that as I got older, I realized that my entire life of going back and forth to Europe, back and forth to family in Germany, living with them, my dad's side of the family, my mother's side of the family, was a wealth of things I didn't even know was happening to me, sort of underneath it all. My awareness of the world was very different from someone who grew up with 2 American parents. my awareness of my parents' unhappiness and the war as a background. These were things that by the time I was in high school, I was consumed with. I cared that they were so unhappy. My families after the war, I think it did such damage to them. There just was some complete bond and closeness, but some just such deep damage and dysfunction. And that weighed with me my whole life. It was just something I always pursued, that kind of focus, like why and how. I majored in German in college. I learned all about the history and the culture and really started asking questions in my family. But then, I think I shared this with you before. I think also in my own heart, I was really pretty miserable. And I think I came to a point of when I ran into the only spiritual people I ever met in high school were Christians. Proud, born again, Bible thumping, Jesus believing Christians. And I met so many wonderful people who truly, truly did have such a heart for those things. But there was nothing else for me around. I couldn't find anything. I didn't have the internet back then. This is 1974. I had no way of researching meditation and things that I thought were kind of cool, but didn't know anything about. And so I just really happily went to a Bible study and latched on to that belief system for many, many years. It really, truly did meet a deep need. I believe that sometimes we think we found the thing, but what we really found was just the first step of our own path. It's not that we found the answer, it's that we found a way to get on the path. And I think that carried through to school, because when I taught this is God's honest truth. I really only became a teacher after my oldest daughter graduated from the same high school. I started in my early 40s. And the reason I did was because I never wanted to teach, at least not in a school. And I discovered that my daughters' lives were so changed by the good teachers they had. Because, if you've observed anything in the world of education, a teacher can make or break a child's desire to learn. And so you watch your children struggle through their education, and I saw the incredible impact a good teacher had. So I got the opportunity to just fill in this retiring German teacher's shoes, very impromptu. And my only reason for doing so was that I really, really hoped I could give these students one class at least that they didn't hate going to, that they didn't dread, that didn't just completely squelch their love of learning. And then as I began to teach a foreign language, of course, teaching the culture was hugely important to me. I'm talking about deep culture. I'm not talking about the lederhosen and the beer drinking culture. I'm talking about why. Why have the Germans been drinking beer for 2,000 years? What is the attitude towards alcohol in places that have used it for 3,000 years? Why do we have a bad attitude about alcohol? Can these things be times used for good celebration amongst people? Can we smoke the peace pipe and not become addicts? And I would talk to my students about just almost any topic you could mention. Like we watched a movie and the father told the little boy, German boys don't cry. Well, that was a big topic we had. What have you learned about crying? What does your family believe about crying? Can boys cry? Do you feel ashamed if you cry? And what I found as the years went by is that my students wanted these conversations desperately. They wanted to talk about just these very real things. And that just grew and built. And I added those kinds of elements to my German lessons until it became really apparent to me that it was something that really all the high school students needed to look at some of these issues, who they were, what they stood for, what they believed, where they got their news, all kinds of things like that.
That's so deep. It's huge, and especially at a time like you spoke about your own personal space that you were in as a teenager, as a child to immigrant parents, that there's so much stuff, and there's a lot of, it's almost like a vacuum, but a vacuum packed with so much baggage.
Yeah.
Where you can't move, yet you're trying to look for something. Does that make any sense or sound right?
That is exactly how I felt in high school when I was 16 and when I got saved, which I don't consider myself a saved, born-again Christian anymore at all. And if any of my past friends, I've thought a lot about this week, Ermi, because I have all these people in my life that they know I don't really quite believe the way I used to, but they don't know what to make of it. And they're too afraid to ask. And as the years go by and I get older, a lot of people are more willing to talk now, where a lot of the pain is over from past church breakups and things. We've been out of the church we were in for almost 20 years, but it damaged my children terribly. There was a lot of abuse that we were not aware of. And so there were some real broken relationships after that. I'm always a little worried about, I worry a lot about what people think from my personal life, but I think I'm at a place now with, when Trish started approaching me about her podcast, I thought, I have nothing to be afraid of anymore because my journey has been incredible and I can now call it that. And it doesn't matter to me what other people really think, because I asked a friend the other day, okay, so I don't believe what you believe 100% any longer, but we still have fellowship, so go figure that one out. Because something that was always believed in various spiritual systems is that if you're not like me, we cannot have fellowship. And that's just not true. You can have fellowships with your students who don't know anything. You can connect to a person's depths and their spirit or whatever you want to call it. And you do not need any system or really any savior. That's kind of where I've landed,
Yeah, I totally connect with that. But do you think that, or do you feel potentially that your worry is coming from a place where you're aware of the fact that the kind of system and the belief framework that you're familiar with is something that the people you're concerned about still strongly identify with?
Does that concern me, you mean? Like, do I wish
Yes,
I could get them out of it?
Yeah.
I think that, if I don't know if you've ever been involved in a very strong community of faith that proselytized and evangelized. Have you ever? Do you know what that even feels like?
To some degree.
Yeah. So I think coming from a background where we did aggressively preach the gospel to people and tell them they needed to be saved according to these terms. And I did that for so many years with a genuine faith, because the main thing was that when I became a Christian, or however you want to phrase it, when I was 16, that is when my longing for my family really, it's like my heart. And today I look at it more like my heart chakra was activated in such a way that I just had such a love for my family, and I saw how little peace they had. And I wanted them to have that more than anything. But I was immature and I was young, and I do what all teenagers and 20-somethings do. They tell everybody how they've screwed their life up and my life up, and they're not doing it right, and I found the right way. I didn't say those words, but I believed it, and I came off that way. Like, you need what I found. And so now when I talk to people who are still very strongly in that, I just don't believe that anymore. I don't believe I'm here to save anyone or proselytize, or if I'm here to do anything, it's just to live. And if I can water somebody or encourage them or pass on the blessing, I am available, because I'm very, very person oriented. I'm very connected to my loved ones, friends, family, whoever they may be, former students, teachers. And so, I never feel like I have to dissuade someone, because I feel like if they're genuinely, well, let me turn this around on you. Because I was thinking of a question the other day. If I wanted to start, I want to start really, because I'm going to have this, I'm looking forward to having conversations with my neighbors. I told you a little bit about this. And really, I do want to ask people about their spiritual background. But, even using the word spiritual is just, it triggers certain things for certain people. But let me ask you, what I would really be interested in knowing from all of my loved ones is, when was the first time you as a child remember your heart going, oh, to something, help, or show me, or, that first prayer that wasn't taught, that first inclination that there is something and I need help from it. I didn't even think about it until this morning, but for me, I was like 8 or 9 years old. I remember it as though it were yesterday. Now, for years, there was no, quote, answer to that cry. When I look at it today, I go, whoa, you start something when you do that.
Absolutely. Yes, you do.
So my old friends know we've healed a lot, because of, like I said, this church of ours was over for 20 years. And I recently talked to a very dear friend of mine from the past and told her that the only thing I said to her was that I'm just sad to see that after knowing you for almost 30 years, you can't talk about anything else but your sin. And you feel such a weight from your sin. And I said, and that is just something I no longer believe. And I really wish, if anything, I could get you to believe yourself when you say that you're in a religion where your Savior died for you to give you an abundant life. And yet all you talk about is how sinful you are. And so you can't access this abundant life. And let me ask you, is there some big kink that you need to work out here? Because is this really the way you want to live? And is this really the way you think your God wanted you to live if he did indeed give you this abundant life? And I'm finding myself able to ask that, Ermi, because I'm not trying to convert anybody. I genuinely now see her struggling with this sin thing she's hung on to. And I'm just like, you should be set free from this. All human beings, I think, need to be set free from our own concept of our own failure and our own sin and our own whatever our abject misery is. I think every human being needs to be. But when someone claims to have found the answer and then they can't live any other way but still in their abject misery, then I have a little challenge for someone like that.
I love a
What
good
kind of a
challenge.
God do you have?
Yeah, well, this is it, right? Oh gosh, everything you said, it makes so much sense. And we are like that. I want to say we're like that as humans, but part of me feels like we're not really. We've just become this way because everything that we thought of, every aspect of knowledge or intelligence or systematic beliefs have actually removed us and taken us away from ultimately who we really are. Because what you said about, that feeling when your heart chakra, or that feeling when you get it and it just takes over and it's huge.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you felt that so young and then you spent all that time doing everything, living life, right?
Right.
And then have now got to this point where you're like, I know that feeling. It's real. And I felt it then. And actually, yeah, this is real. And I so get that. I totally connect with that. Thank you.
But I do think, I'm not sure if you think, I look a lot at history, of course, because I taught a lot of history, but I'm looking at human beings even, 2,000 years ago, I was watching this video about the Germanic warriors fighting Rome. And when I watched the documentary, it was obvious to me that these people were far more evolved and intelligent and non-barbaric than I thought people were 2,000 years ago. So much more. And I was like, oh, you have to rethink the way you look at ancient peoples.
So true.
And I would venture to say from most of the ancient literature that I am familiar with, and especially Old Testament, Jewish Bible, those kinds of documents, there is a terrible preoccupation with what everybody would like to think has got to be the evil in the world that then lands in my heart somewhere. And I do believe that we're only at the beginning of a new age where maybe we will be reinterpreting whether or not we think there is an evil entity keeping us from realizing ourselves, or if that's just us pinching off the energy of the universe that we're living through. And then people immediately say to me, well, I don't know about that. What about Hitler? And I'm, I, for one, understand all those questions, but does that mean he wasn't ever a small child with genuine hopes and his life was twisted in such a way that he just pinched off every possible avenue of goodness? I think we're capable of that. I don't have all the answers, but this concept of evil has really been on my mind lately because it leaves you so powerless if you believe that you're fighting against a big dark force your whole life. And if you believe you were, and this question too, because I don't have the answer to it, I'm not trying to say I do, but what do you think? Were we born basically good like all other natural creation? All trees and flowers and plants, they don't want to be something else but the beautiful thing they are. And yet we're always telling ourselves we want to be different than we are. We're never good enough. We feel bad over everything we don't do right. So that got me to wondering if I hadn't been, like you were saying, a lot of this inner spirituality is squelched as early as the training by our parents when they start telling you why you're bad. You're not bad because you're playing the piano and you're practicing and you're learning and it's getting on my nerves, but you got to stop because it's getting on my nerves. And then the child walks away feeling bad about it and maybe later deciding he is somehow just not good. And it's a very deep thing. And I am really looking at that because Ermi, this week has been just for me. Since you asked me to tell you, I'm just going to be as honest with you as I can. But
Tell me.
for me, on my spiritual journey since I was 8 years old, this week has been the most enlightening, eye-opening time of my life. And it's all based around whether or not I believe that I really was good all through my life. And I did the best I could with the resources I had. And I really didn't do such a bad job. And how good I was to myself when I learned how to soothe myself, and when I fell in love with music because I had nothing else to keep me company. And yes, I also ate 4 bowls of cereal and watched TV for 3 hours because those were the only resources I had around me when I was a little girl. And I hated myself for those things, but I'm beginning to remember all the ways that I did live and I did good by myself. And I'm just going, wow. Now, if your premise changes and you believe that all along you were this good entity, like every other natural thing in life has got this goodness to it, right? I mean, there's very few genuinely only poisonous species that are, and if they're out to poison, it's usually still got some part of it might be a good reason for that, right? But if I really am a human being who was meant to realize all the good potential within us, but I go through life believing I'm bad and I've got to climb an uphill climb and I got to fight against addiction and I got to fight against this, and then I'm going to be stuck all the time.
Yeah.
And I feel very unstuck this moment. I never believed I'd actually find the day because I feel like I've been looking for this key my whole life. What has got me so stuck? Why can't I live the abundant life that I believe I want to live? Why can't I always do that? What keeps me stuck on the ground? Could be because I've told myself I'm bad my whole life. And if you tell yourself something your whole life, then you will never be anything but, I play the piano and the guitar okay, but I'm not really that good because I'm bad. I don't practice. That's just those kinds of things that we say to ourselves our whole life are so powerful.
Yeah, they are incredibly. And you use the example of the child walking away feeling a certain way because, a parent has said, I can't listen to this, or, in terms of the piano, it sounds bad, you're getting on my nerves. And this is going back to the point when I was talking about language actually does us the biggest disservice.
Oh, yes.
Because our language doesn't match our capability of actual genuine human emotion and feeling. And that's a very recent thing for me in my journey to kind of put those pieces together to say, yes, I love talking and I can talk to you and, we can have the most amazing conversation and you'll have these amazing insights and things will kind of happen and you'll piece things together. But the emotion that I feel from that, the release that I get in my body, the letting go that happens is so intense. And actually, the only way to describe that is genuinely through the energy from me, the vibrational setting of me that changes. And there are no words for that.
No.
It's universal.
And there are no words for it when someone doesn't really want it themselves. And that is a wonderful thing. That's why it's so wonderful to be asked to talk on a podcast like this, because, for years and years, we tried to teach people well-meaningly. And I tried as a teacher so hard. I tried so hard to be a good teacher. And I was. I have students in my life. They'll be in my life till my deathbed, I'm sure. I have wonderful, wonderful students in my life. So it's not like I'm looking for compliments. I did a great job teaching. But day after day after day teaching to children who are in such a place that they don't want to learn takes a lot out of you. And I knew that it was time for me to retire. The timing was it was time. And so to be able to talk to somebody who's actually wants to talk about these things, wants to, it's like there's people out there that do. And I feel like this is a time to get to do that, to get to really, your audience has to want it. They have to want to find a new way to be unstuck, to go on in their journey, whatever their journey might be,
Yeah.
But there's no way I could have been stuck as a fairly intelligent, functional, white American woman. I could not have been that stuck without there being lots of people out there just stuck. And they're so longing to hear just the tiniest little clue for today to help me get unstuck and go on this journey, you know?
Yeah, totally. Okay, so you've spoken about so much and so much has happened. So I want to ask you about trauma because there is a lot there. You mentioned in terms of what was happening from your parents' families, from your family in Europe, your own family's experience. What is your learning, understanding, and feeling on the trauma that you've experienced?
Oh boy, you are asking everything that I've been living and working through in my head for so long now. Try to keep this in a nutshell. I think where I'm at right now is this place where I believe that from my experience with people throughout my life, that everybody has experienced some trauma. And if you think about, when we talk about kids having Asperger's or autism, there's a spectrum, and you can't put anyone in, there's such a spectrum. Well, there's also such a spectrum of trauma. And my daughter's trauma, for instance, was sexual assault and abuse from the time she was 14 till she was about 32. And that trauma is beyond my comprehension physically, what she goes through sometimes and how she's a trooper. I call her my little effing goddess because she has gotten through this in such amazing ways. But that trauma is very intense. And she and I talked about physical trauma and how that can often be another layer on the spectrum, that when people have been seriously physically abused, sexually, beatings, that does add a new layer to trauma. But there are very, very few human beings who have not been traumatized by fear, events, confusion, horrors that they never understood. Nobody could ever help them understand them. And that has become paramount. I taught in a low poverty high school. We had, I think it was like 30% of the kids were on probably 30 to 60% welfare, food stamps, very traumatized kids. And you can't live in today's world and work in any kind of place like that and not recognize that people have a lot of trauma and they wear it inside them and they don't even know they have it. So my daughter and her sister, my other daughter, went on a retreat for trauma victims, and it was for first responders and military because my daughter was in the Navy. And I went for the last weekend of it. The parents were invited. And I remember thinking to myself, the whole world needs this. The whole world has got to get to a place someday where in our intelligence, we understand this about people and that everybody needs some trauma retreat. They need help to let it go, to understand it, to learn how to release it, to learn that all people really do go through this. That was the most profound thing my daughter learned, was that she really left there feeling like she was not alone. She really wasn't. She had been told that, but she felt it. She felt it, that, wow, there are so many people that in this world that have been so severely traumatized. And so it's very near and dear to my heart, the topic is,
Yes, that sounds amazing. And I'm really glad that your daughter feels that connection and doesn't feel so alone, because that in itself is a whole different layer of just too much.
Right. Right. And we tend to, the world's changing though, Ermi. Look at your podcast, one example out of how many, maybe hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands of people who are out there showing people and making them aware of who they really are.
Mm-hmm.
So it's amazing to me. When I think about my 16-year-old self thinking I needed God to save me and looking for answers and crying out to the universe for anything, you can only imagine in my lifetime, I couldn't find any answers in those days. Today, any young person can get online and find some hope. They can find other people who are devastated with them, people with the exact same confusion about the same issues. There's such a plethora of available help. And it's all happened in my lifetime, not to mention how holistic medicine and meditation and understanding the energy centers and all of that's becoming so mainstream. The chiropractors are now getting paid for, but with insurance. And I've seen so many alternative things over the years become so much more accepted. And that's thrilling. That is really thrilling to me to see that. I don't even know if maybe we're so powerful in our own prayers and longings that my whole life of wanting to find answers to my bad health, to my parents' unhappiness, that we weren't ushering in with every single prayer this new awakening. I believe that with all my heart.
Yes, no, I get that. It's incredibly powerful. We've been so, like I said, disconnected to our own true ability, our own true natural superpower.
Right.
Well,
and our poor parents, we blame it all on them. I mean, I did. My entire life, I blamed everything on my mother. And it's really hard not to when you have a formidable mother, which I do. Very formidable German woman. And yet I think today, if I had known I was good when I was little, it wouldn't have been so painful. And my mother didn't know how to say to me, honey, we're all born with talents and gifts. And I can see that you love music. And I promise you, I'm going to support it. I bought you a piano, right? And I will make sure you play every day from this time to this time. And I'll never tell you you get on my nerves. But I didn't have that kind of a mother. Yes, she wanted to supply a piano, but she didn't know how to make me feel like I was a human being who could grow in this talent, who could grow in this ability if I practiced. If it didn't sound good to her, it was like, oh, stop. And just teaching your children that is not because you're horrible. It's because you don't know. You don't know a better way to introduce life to them and help them to whatever,
So true. I totally understand that because I see the difference. Like I look at my kids and I guess I am that parent. I want them to, well, not for me, but for themselves to do what they love, right? And even if what they love, they do it really badly, they're doing what they love.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's fascinating though, because at home, we have that chilled out, do what you love, look at things. But they still go to school. They still have friends whose parents are still wired in a different way. So whatever I'm creating at home, what they're still getting from the outside is still some of that rubbish. I want to, it's the added, It's baggage that's coming from elsewhere. So that's quite an interesting thing to sit here and watch as a parent and as someone who is at this stage in my journey, if you see what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Do I sit by?
It doesn't really change when they get older.
Yeah, there you go. See?
Yeah.
So tell me, what's next for you? What's happening? And, why did people say to you, don't retire? That's what the other thing is like.
Oh, because I think, first of all, the people who tell me not to retire have not taken enough time to get to know me, even family members. They have no idea I do something like this today. Because, we talked the other day, what's the point of telling a family member, my family, they would think, oh yeah, here Vicki goes again. She thinks she's all that. My aunt in Germany used to love to say, oh, she's a Jesus freak. It's just a trend. She'll get over it someday. So these are the kinds of ways in family you get treated. But I knew because I knew I would never be bored, because what I want to still do in this lifetime, I don't have enough time for it. It will probably take eternity. And I hope there's an eternity because I've got a lot of things I want to do, But right now, it's just the practical things, Ermi. My husband, if I could show you my home, we live in a house for 35 years, and he just, after 10 years of construction, finished my brand new beautiful kitchen. And the rest of my house is completely under construction still. Can you see that? Could you see the scaffolding and stuff? So my job really this next year is I want to, in a home that I've lived in for 35 years, I want to clean every corner of my home, get rid of everything so my kids don't have to go through it someday, and live the simplest life we can, and live in this house for as long as our legs will carry us up the stairs. But I don't want to it's like everything for me now has become, I don't know, it's become like this magical work. I don't want to do anything anymore that's mundane and miserable. And I can't even begin to describe it to you, but it's like even cleaning out my jewelry cabinet. I just created a whole new world inside there and had so much fun and thought of all the different people I could give this piece to and that piece to. Whereas maybe a week ago, when I still believed I was bad, I mean, I didn't go around saying that. You have to understand it was a deep premise, right? I would have looked at the time I spent on it and gone, are you out of your mind spending 6 hours on a one cabinet? Don't you have anything better else to do with your life? What good are you doing any human being with this? See, I don't believe that anymore, because if I'm good and I have God within, like I believe all people do, then everything I do is going to have some good outcome. And I just really believe that. And it makes everything different,
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do. I totally do. And I can see how it's changed things for you, because your body changes, your face
Oh,
lights up, your eyes are like
if you even
lighting up.
knew me, yeah. Well, and my body lighting up and my face lighting up. I'm on a healing journey of a kind that I've never done before. And I am doing a very restricted diet right now to rebuild the microbiome, the good and bad bacteria, and the prebiotics and probiotics. It's that whole premise. I'm sure you know plenty about that. But I'm getting into it super, super deep. And, my
Yeah.
husband and I, with our lifetime of eating fairly well, it wasn't impossible to do, but it was still pretty challenging. And I've always had a weight problem my whole life. And that's a big story. We could have a whole podcast on just weight alone and women. I just read a book called God, Women, and Food. And I went, oh, this is so interesting. But I'm on this journey, and I found out that I have had a hard time losing weight my whole life. And I did some fasting and lost about 40 pounds 10 years ago. And I've never gained it back because I got some control. That was a spiritual journey for me as well. And I got some maintenance finally, because I'd been going up and down my whole life. And it's very bad for your health, your heart, and everything. So I was really concerned about my health. And I could never drop the weight. And my daughter said to me, Mom, you meditate all the time. She was just make this next, however long, a time of meditation to discover what is really what you're storing in that fat. What are you hanging on to? And I said, I know, because I know about diets and toxicity. And I know that I've been willing to detoxify physically because I know it's going to happen if I eat this way. And sure enough, I had a 3-day migraine. I got through it, but I'm not losing any weight. Everything's still, I have a lot of visceral stomach fat, so I'm concerned about it and I don't see it going. So I began to meditate, didn't know where it was going to go, because I do believe in a higher power, but I believe it's also in me. So it's not like I pray to this outside thing. I don't really know what I'm praying to, and I don't care. Because you know what Lao Tzu said? He said, if you can name God, then you don't know him. So I can't name him. Her, me, is it me? I don't know. It could be me, for all I know. I'm my own God, truly. But in my meditation, it took me places I never dreamt in a million years. I could not believe that I had some odd 45 years of rejection, deep, deep, painful rejection that I had never been able to let go of. Around certain people, I let go of that. This morning and 2 days ago, I let go of the atrocious guilt that I have about some things that are so nonsensical. And I learned to sit with it in a new way through meditation. And I just literally, I feel the inflammation leaving my body to start with. Not the fat, but I have no more inflammation. I know something's healing from the inside out, like my whole digestive tract. Then get this, I learned, oh my gosh, I was so excited. I wanted to just jump through the roof. I learned last week that each chakra, I'm super into the energy centers these days, that each chakra expresses love in a different way.
Yeah.
And I always wondered, why, as soon as I'm done meditating every morning, do I feel this absolute drive to call so-and-so and so-and-so, and I need to call so-and-so, and I got to encourage
Why does that happen? Yeah.
Because our heart chakra gets energized, and your heart chakra is the chakra that expresses love for other people. But listen to this. This is going to blow your mind. If you know this, just stop me dead in my tracks and tell me. For you. But your stomach chakra is the chakra that expresses love for you or me, for me, Vicki. And I heard that, and like in a nanosecond, my whole life made sense to me. Oh my gosh, Vicki, you've been telling yourself since you were 6 years old. Nobody told you this, that you need to stop overeating, that your stomach always feels terrible. You don't like yourself this way. Tomorrow, I'm not going to overeat. My stomach was talking to me. Our stomachs have been guiding us. Our stomachs are where we get panic attacks, anxiety attacks, nervous stomach, where all the intestinal things happen because of the sick stomach. And I cannot tell you how revelatory that was to me. I was just like, oh, and it gave me every incentive to keep doing this diet because I went, I am feeding my body all the good things. It has a chance now to completely jumpstart everything because I don't have to hate myself anymore. I can make a wise adult choice to literally do what is loving for my body instead of the loving choice I made to overeat, which was the only way I knew how to comfort myself. It's not that that wasn't loving. It just wasn't wise. And now I'm too old to keep being stupid and not treat myself better. You know, does that make any sense?
It does. But you're not too old and you're not too stupid.
No, but you'd be surprised how long we carry around our childhood habits way into our 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. And that is pretty stupid and unwise. But the new me is not going to call myself names anymore because I really did have to go, are we born into this natural world like other animals with just the ability to become the best human being? And are we ultimately, therefore, just starting out as a good natural thing? And if that's true, then that changes everything about the way I look at it. And it's not so much good versus evil. Does that make sense to you? It's more the entity and essence of who I am is not the sinner who needed a savior to die for me on the cross. But lest I should offend any Christian in saying that, who will be, if there's an afterlife, which I believe in, I don't know what it's going to look like, but hey, quantum physics, energy, the whole 9 yards, everything points to an afterlife, to our energy never dying. And if I do get to see the wonderful human beings that have loved me throughout history from their books or in person, I will totally do a beeline to Jesus Christ. He's the one who introduced me to this whole journey. It was the first inkling I got that someone could be enlightened. And I do feel like that person was a real friend to me, you know, over the years. Just not my savior because I was such a wretch and I needed him to die for me. Sorry, all of you dear loved ones. Oof, I know this will just kill you to hear me say that. But that is where I am.
And that's where you've got to.
So where do I go from here? I'm adopting this whole new philosophy of life because I grew up, my childhood was not horrible. I had to have a psychologist tell me it was traumatic because I never felt terribly traumatized. I didn't feel terribly traumatized by my child molestation at 4 years old. It never seemed to feel like trauma to me. I wasn't terribly traumatized at the fact that my mother sent me back and forth to Germany from the time I was 4 years old till I was 16. And, when you're little and you're ripped away from your home, that is traumatizing, but it never felt like trauma to me. But my psychologist was telling me some years ago, I don't go to her anymore, but this wonderful woman that I went to, that these are traumatic events. And what you've done probably is I've probably stored all that trauma in my stomach vat.
Yes, me too. It's all there.
And, I'm ready to whatever. I mean, whatever. Whatever it takes, I will continue that spiritual journey. But I also want to regain some playfulness, regain it. I'd kind of like to learn it. I didn't grow up with a lot of kids around me. I didn't have a sibling that was my age. I really did grow up very lonely. My parents were both immigrants. They worked very hard. My mother worked all day in Chicago, downtown. She didn't get home till 6 or 7 at night. My sister was 5 years older than me, but 7 years ahead of me in school. So I really was kind of left to my own devices all the time. And growing up that way, you do develop sort of a way to just be by yourself a lot. You learn how to do that. But I was never happy with it. And today I can look back and go, I am so happy for all those things because I didn't have a lot of playfulness. That's not great. I wish I had. But today I go, I could learn how to play. I can't get my husband. He plays differently. He has a different sense of humor. And I've often said to my husband, we got to learn how to be more playful, play more. And he's like, what do you even mean? And I'm like, I don't know. I want to learn how to play. I don't know what it means, Ermi, but I'll tell you one thing it means. I, as a retired woman, I don't know about you, but I think people struggle with time. I had to do some serious meditating over my issues with time over the years. And then coming from, I don't know if you know anything about the German culture. They're just absolute fanatics about being punctual and being on time and judgments about not being on time. And so I had all that to work through. And I just came to this place where I thought, I don't have any structure in my life now that I'm retired. I know the things I want to do, but I don't feel like I'm doing what I want to do. I feel like I'm all over the place. And I thought, you need a schedule. And I went, don't go there. You've been doing militaristic schedules for yourself your whole life, and they're never the answer. It's like you tell yourself to do something and you think, because I told myself and I wrote it down, now I'm going to do it. But you don't. And I thought, no, it's got to be playful. It's got to be a playful thing. It's got to give me so much room to live the way I want to live without guilt that I didn't do what I said I would do on Mondays. So I came up with this. It all happened while I was having insomnia. I came up with this beautiful schedule where I named each day of the week something meaningful for me and sometimes fun. And then I had the things in the day that I would always want to do. I always want to eat well and take some time to cook and chop those vegetables that I hate. I always want to move and exercise and stretch. There's some things that are non-negotiable on that list. I always want to connect with somebody every day, just a little bit. Those things are non-negotiable. Hygiene, home hygiene. But make them fun and put them in the schedule, because otherwise what you put in your schedule is Monday I do my podcast, Tuesday I do this, and then all that stuff becomes a burden. But those are the things that are really life-sustaining, right? So that got into it in a real fun way. I wove it sort of in and out of my schedule. And then I left, each day has sort of a focus. But then I left 2 days in the week to where if the focus doesn't happen, I got these extra 2 days to throw down all my energy anywhere I want to, if I feel like I want to make up some of that time, or I go on a day trip somewhere. So I just made it so flexible and so lovely. And I'm a schedule gal and I'm a teacher. I had to have kids on schedules all the time, right? So I have the schedule now that is so much fun. There's no guilt in it. I built it without guilt. So that's one of the things I do. And I share it with people. And a few friends of mine now are going, you got to sit down with me and teach me how to do this. But, it really comes from the heart. I mean, I have found over the years that whenever anybody's inspired by something and then they try to get someone else to do it, people have to know what they want in their lives. No one can motivate another person to actually get up and do what they're supposed to do. It's got to come from you,
Absolute truth. I love the schedule. So I have something similar too. And I just have like a theme, like each day is a theme. And
I want to hear them. Will you share them with me? I'd love to hear.
So I literally have like one day is just writing. That's it. Anything to do with writing, right? Because that's what I love. That's like my ultimate, I say it's my ultimate thing. And then I talk about how restrictive language is. But there we go. And then but it is. Yeah.
I want to stop you real quick because I want you to know how much you're saying that. Help me understand how my mother's words as a child were so restrictive and she didn't even know it.
Yeah.
How she restricted my humanity and how much we could grow in that, and really helped me to see that. But go on. So you have a writing day?
Yes, I have a writing day, and I do actually have like a play day. So I love music. Okay, again, I can't play anything, and my singing voice is probably not the best, but it's okay. So I actually have drum and bass days, garage days with all the music genres, which I love. And although when
your day, what do you do? Do you just allow yourself to listen to it all day, or how does that happen?
I will dance to it. I will sing to it. I will do anything to do with drum and bass, garage, jungle, like, go take out old pictures of me going raving with my friends, get in touch with them, whatever it is. And then I have like, and so every morning I usually write like a quote. We have a whiteboard downstairs. I write a quote on there to set the theme for the day. So it could be, one day would just be gratitude. Let's talk about gratitude, and then the kids would just be like, okay. I mean, they just don't have a choice. And then every day again, it's like I'll sit there and I'll meditate, and they can be running around me. I don't care. They could do what they need to do and they get on with it. And then the other week we had days of the week named after each of our favourite songs. So we just had to choose a song.
And then I got the stuff down. Yes, this is great.
And that's it. And then, oh God, that was hilarious. So I have this drum and bass mix song that I listen to every day, and it's called Now or Never. And every day, it's like the kids are like, okay, she's running around the house listening to this. Like, I'm just like crazy.
Yeah.
But looking around now, and I can see that a whole load of washing needs to be, like, the laundry needs to be done. And I'm like, yeah, that's got to happen.
I mean, that's where I think our schedules just we have to have room for those things instead of thinking they don't exist, and then they become such burdens.
Yeah.
So we have to kind of creatively figure out how those things happen because they have to happen. And we have to teach our kids how to wash their clothes and their bodies and make food for themselves. I mean, that's the best thing we could do for them, is teach them how to cook. But yet, when do we put those things in our schedule? They're just always the things that we have to do, and they drive us crazy. And oh my gosh, it's almost dinner time and I have to put this job down now and cook. And that could be playful too. So if you come up with something really good about cooking, you can share that with me in the future.
Oh God, playful for cooking. To be fair, I do let the kids cook, and because I found it very stressful being in the kitchen with my daughter when she was first learning how to cook, I ordered those, you get you probably get them there as well, you get the fresh recipe boxes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I went through those. Everything's kind of measured up, right? And I don't have to be there measuring. And I knew all the ingredients were fresh. Everything was organic. Everything was like all okay. So I got those in and I just let her get on with it. And it worked a treat, because now we've had a few hiccups, some measuring issues. But apart from that, if the kids want to cook, that's fine. Just get on with it. But then you have to clean up.
That's great. If I had my kids home again, I would really think about things differently too, rather than have everything. It's so funny. Mothers, we could have another whole week of podcasts on. But mothers do take on this unbearable load that nobody ever tells them you shouldn't do. You still hear women all the time, and it's our job to feed our families, and it's our job to clean the house, and it's our job to teach them how to do everything right. And we put so much on us. But I think if I had it over to do, I would tell my kids today, look, my job was to keep you safe, bring you into this world, and do the best I can by you. But your job is to figure out how to take care of yourself. And that's why each one of you guys is going to have a day to cook every week, because you'll thank me someday that you know how to cook a healthy meal for yourself. You'll be really glad. I didn't really know that back then. I thought I had to be the super mom, and that the good example was doing it all. I'd really rethink that today. Yeah, my weekdays, I even gave myself a Thursday that I call Thunder Thursday or Throwdown Thursday.
Nice.
Because on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, Monday is Menu Monday, Tuesday is Talent Tuesday, Wednesday is Work Wednesday. So I have different focuses on those days. And Thursday, I know life well enough to know that there's going to be something I started when I worked on, my drawings the other day that I never got a chance to really get very far because of interruptions. And today I'm just going to spend the whole day drawing. It's Throwdown Thursday. Or I had to go visit my mom on Monday, so I didn't make out any schedule for the week, no menu, don't know what we're doing. I'm going to have to make it up today. It may not take me all day, but I got today to do it. I'm never off balance with it, So Fridays are my financial Fridays. Those are the days to take care of all bookkeeping, all money matters, shopping, blah, 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 Amazon orders, which I think if I do it on a regular basis, they won't become overwhelming, and I'll end up having a big part of Friday free. And the Saturdays are like saved for Saturdays. Who knows? Maybe someone says, hey, you guys want to go on a quick trip with us, see this new house we're looking at, whatever. Yeah, let's do it Saturday. I have all day Saturday. Save it for Saturday, whatever it might be. Sundays are sweet and simple. And that day, I don't care, but don't ask me to do anything that isn't easy on my soul. And then Mondays will start over again.
And then start.
It's fun. We have to bring playfulness in, right?
Yes, you totally. So I guess my final question to you would be, if you could share a question with the listeners, leave a question with them, what would that be and why?
Well, it's very similar to the answer I gave when Trish asked that on her podcast. What advice would you give to anybody of any generation for life or whatever? And I really would have to say that I would say to anybody, if I had their listening ear, have you ever considered that you lived your life and every year in it and every struggle because you yourself were supposed to accumulate the wisdom you need to go on living, and that you have it? And have you ever considered relying on it a little bit more and stop looking for the answers everywhere else and start listening to yourself a little bit? It would be a challenging question because that's kind of a new concept for people. But you have inner wisdom. We were meant to glean understanding from our experiences, and we were meant to have them as tools to get us through. And I'm all about finding tools elsewhere, but I think we undervalue the God within. So find it, I guess, challenge somebody to really believe in themselves that way.
I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Eternal Paradigm. Join me next time.